Hello everyone. In this video, I will be showing you how to make your paintings more interesting by bringing on the shades. Hello everyone. So last video we talked about blending. In reality, blending and shading work together. But I wanted to break that up because I wanted to show you how you can blend colors together first before I show you shading. Okay, so this video we're talking about shading. So you see here some drawing here which I was preparing for this video. So for now you can ignore everything else and focus on just these two. Okay, so what do you do with shading? So I'm going to show you with just a pencil shading. I'm using a 6B pencil because it's the softest that I have right now. And remember, if you were watching the other videos on pastel drawing, I have told you before, like in a landscape painting, or you will have a foreground, midground, and background. So in this case, what shading does is the value of whatever the painting is. So the easiest way to judge a value is with black and white. So that's why I'm using a pencil for shading. So in colors, there are also different grades of value. So some colors are lighter and some are darker. Okay, we will leave that for later. That's what all these circles that you see here are for. Okay, they're all the same color. But for now, let's talk about the simplest of shading first. So you see here, let's look at this first square. You see here, it's just some squiggly lines and in a square. Okay, so if we are to remind ourselves about landscape, the background, midground, and the foreground. Okay, in this case, if I want to turn this into landscape to make this drawing a little less bland with shading, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to do flat shading so you get an idea of what it is, and it's not going to be like expertly done. Alright, so hopefully you can get an idea of what it is. So first, we're going to make the whole thing one color. Okay, even the top part, but very lightly. So we go back to our layering video. This is like our layer 1. Okay, now if there are some things outside of the box, we won't care about it for now, okay, because we are more focused on the shading part. So next, we are doing this area here. So we're gonna darken it by putting another layer here on. Okay, so this is where layering comes in. So you see that I'm darkening this area. I'm not pressing very hard. This is layer number 2, okay? So I'm not pressing very hard. I'm not pressing at all. I'm just kind of lightly going over it. Okay, and don't worry about the other stuff. Okay, this is layer 2, and yes, we're covering the bottom area here as well. Okay, make sure that it's at the very least the same darkness as this area here. Alright, So now we're gonna darken the lower part even more by putting another layer here. So I'm just outlining so that I can see where the shapes are, because it's getting a bit darker. And for this bottom shape here, I'm making it the darkest. Alright, so from what you can see right now is you're already seeing some kind of a 3D effect going on now. Foreground, midground, and background. The sky is the background. So now the only thing to make this look even better is, the only way to make this look even better is with blending. So I'm going to blend the top area. I'm going to use the top area because that's the sky. So it's like it has to be the smoothest of all. So you're seeing me building up the layers here, like one by one. Now if you want to get really detailed about this, yes, even the sky has areas that are closer to you, so like you can add clouds and all that stuff, but we're not going into that. Okay. Now I'm gonna blend this part as well, this area, very lightly. Okay, you can see that because I'm using white paper, a lot of the textures are coming out. The texture on the paper, and this paper I'm using is normal drawing paper. The paper that you get from an art block. Right? And then I am going to blend this area just slightly because it's closer to us, so we will see more textures. And I'm not going to blend the bottom part at all, but I'm going to add more textures in, like this. Like make it look like a little bit like grass. And here you can already see a bit of the 3D effect that's going on. Okay, very simple. Now this is if it's an open area in the landscape. Now we're gonna go to, say, in a forested area. That's why I have this drawing here. So we will start off with like really dark areas as the further you go in, and lighter as the further you come out. So we're gonna assume that this is a very thick forested area. Alright, so we're gonna put layer 1 in. And we're not going to be bothered with too much of the details, like where are all the branches and everything like that. No. Okay. So we're just bothered with the colors, the values, that's all. Hey, you realize that I'm not coloring the whole thing like I did here. It's because I still want to be able to see the drawing, so I'm kind of just making it darker as I go. So these two trees here, there's supposed to be 2 trees here, is deeper than this one, so it's going to be darker as well. And it has to be darker than this one here. So you don't press hard, you just add layers of shading to make it look darker. The better your paper, the more layers of shading it's going to be able to handle. Okay. Now there are more trees in the background, so I'm going to make them even darker. I'm pressing a little harder now because I think the paper is becoming more saturated with the shading. Now you see this little holes here. I'm gonna make it really dark, like almost black. So the last layer I'm pressing very hard. Okay, so now you get the idea. It shows up very well on camera, even better than on real life. Yeah, so you get the idea. So in both these cases, it looks like the whole picture is receding into the background. Okay, so it's like, it's more 3D like. Alright, so this in general is how the way looks. So for this case is when there's light everywhere and can get to anywhere with the light. And then this kind of shading happens when you have light that cannot penetrate the background. So the further in you go, the darker it gets. Alright? So I'm gonna show you, like in real shading drawing, how you do this. Okay, so now with the real object. Okay, so well, you can't really see this cube like I can, but I am going to show you what I mean. Okay, you have a cube and it's lit from, okay, my lighting is, it's lit from this side. It's actually from the top. So if I tilt it like how this drawing looks like, it's coming in from both sides. So if I shine a light on this, like this way, see where the shadow's going, you will kind of see where the dark areas are, the light areas are. Those are the values that I'm talking about. So the top part is lighter than both the bottom part, and the bottom part with the area that's facing furthest away from the light, or facing away from the light, is the darkest, which is where my thumb is. Okay, and the other shade here, the other area, this area here, this part here where the light is kind of partially getting it onto, is the lightest. I mean, it's not the lightest, it's the second lightest. So there are 3 shades here. So if I tilt this, you can still see it, but it's not as pronounced as if I was shining the torchlight on it. Okay, so what I'm trying to illustrate here is this, the value of the lighting. ignore all the textures here because that's not what we're concerned with. Okay, so when you color the whole cube, you can color it that way too. So let me darken the lines of this cube a little bit so I can see what I'm doing, so the lines won't melt into shading like previously. Okay, so now again, layer 1. I'm not going to hold out this cube because I need to put my hand down here. So layer 1, just to get you an idea, I'm not going to smooth out everything. I mean, I can blend it, but not right now. Okay, so I'm doing layer 1. All the same colors. All right. Layer 2, where the side that I want to be darker is here. Right, the second darkest area. And then so we have the light coming this way. Let me put the arrow there. And then we have the darkest shape is on this side. So you see, this is kind of what shading is for. It makes your object pop out like slightly about 3D. So if you did it like, how would I say, like if you're a hyper-realistic artist, which I'm not, you can make this cube look like it's real. Alright, so because this is just a very quick demo, so I'm showing you. Now, in reality, the way the lights hit with every part of this cube that is furthest away from light, it's like this light coming here, it's supposed to be, it hits the cube in such a way that it brightens this area up and slowly goes dark. Alright, so simplistically speaking, this is how it would look in a very simple case of shading. So now in a more advanced sense, you will do it this way. So I'm going to do it another area, like I'm going to put one layer on. Okay. So if you're assuming that the light is coming in this way again, what happens is you will see actually this happening in reality. So that's why I say it's very important to lay down your layers first. So basically you add in the shading last. Okay, so I want this part to be darker than this one. So now I'm going to edit the shading. This part should be quite a bit darker. And same with this, the darkest will be on this end. So you get the idea? So in an abstract case, like if you were to divide Q up like that, I know an artist who does this. She divides, it's a she divides a drawing up into squares, grids, square grids, and then color them like shading. So in essence, what you will have is this. Okay, let me darken this quite a bit more. Okay, so what we have is this. So layer 1 again. Alright. So layer 2 is when I get this darker. And then layer 3 and then now we can put in the detail. So I'm going to leave, again we're going to think of the light hitting this way. So we're going to see that maybe this area here is going to be the lightest. So I will darken this part here and this part here. And then this part here would be the darkest of the 3. So I'm going to make it a little bit more pronounced so it's more visible. Alright. So again, because the light is coming this way, this area here is going to be the darkest on the side, slightly darker on here, and this box is going to be the lightest. But this color cannot be lighter than this one, cannot be darker than this side. Okay. So again, in the grid format, this area would be darker than this one, but this square here would be the darkest. Okay. So this is how shading goes in its simplest form. Okay, this is abstract. This is kind of actually how it should be. Okay, so if you want to emphasize this a little bit more, you would have to do this, something like this, to clean up the edge. There. Now it looks better as a square, as a cube. Alright? So this would give you an idea. Now, in terms of color, now we're switching mindset. So we always view shading in its simplicity, in its simplest form, as shades of black and white. And this is what this is all about. Now, what about color? Okay, with color is a little bit more complex in a way that you have a multitude of color to choose from. Okay, for shading. Alright. So in this case, because I used red, there are several different colors that I can use for shading. And I just arranged the colors in terms of the value that you can see here. Okay, now sometimes colored pencils, the colors may not match the lead. In this case, not every single one of the colored pencils of this line will match the lead. Okay, so sometimes you really do have to look at the lead, the color of the lead, to tell you what the actual color is. So in this case, I'm using red. So now, in its simplest form, if we were to just do plain shading in place of black, we are going to use just red color to do the shading. And you need a pretty sharp lead for this. Okay, not overly sharp, just decently sharp. Doesn't have to be overly sharp like this. And you have to keep sharpening it because they're very soft lead, so they go down really fast. So what happens is, if you pretend this circle is a sphere and the light is coming in this way, then you would shade it accordingly. Now again, I put layer 1 on, so now I'm shading with layer 2. Okay. So at the most with this paper, I know I can get 3 layers on. Of 3 or 4 layers is the max. So the lightest area would be this. You can actually use white. I'm not going to use white today. Okay, and then this is the point where I'm almost fighting with the paper already, because I have to press slightly harder. And then the darkest area would be the area that's away from the light. And I have to press really hard here. Now, then I'll just have to blend the colors in so they smooth out. Okay, so, and if you don't want all these grains to show up, like I said, you have to put like a bottom layer of watercolor on it. So why watercolor is because watercolor wouldn't take up as much space of the paper's tooth as any other medium would. So watercolor is the best. Alright, so you get an idea. Now, what happens if I use gray? Because if you look at this, gray is slightly darker in value than red. I still have to use red and gray together, okay, in conjunction to get some form of shading in. But I would say that I wouldn't be able to get as many layers. It wouldn't be as smooth as this. Okay, so let me show you what I mean. So I'm gonna start from the darkest. It's not sharp enough. Again, light's coming in this way. Now if you use any other color other than red, you will have to go through a top layer again with red so that they all blend in. As you see right now, it's very grayish. Okay, it looks like desaturated red. Now if I go over with red again, it looks a little more red. And at this point, I'm already fighting the paper. But that's the effect when you use gray. Okay. Just so you get an idea. What if I used purple? Let me sharpen this a little bit. So you don't very often find that you want to use gray or black to do the shading. I'll show you black at the very last one because black is very intense. And never mind, I'll talk about that later. So let me show you with purple first. This is purple. So again, I'm going to put the darkest area down first. So the purpose of doing all this is to show you the different effects of using different colors for shading. Okay, so next we're gonna try with blue. So this blue is really dark. So I expect not to be pressing really hard with this. Okay, again, light coming in this way. And then I gotta blend with red again. Okay, so in this case, you would see that it's quite a bit darker than all the others because this value is pretty dark, but it looks a little bit more interesting, like real shadow. Now, if you ever looked at shadow, you will always think that in terms of black and white, you'd be like, well, it's gray and black, you know, shadows like this, okay? Or if I made a shadow, you would see that shadow of this pencil under the light is like, it's gray. It's totally gray. But actually, if you look at it properly, it's maybe slightly bluish as opposed to like really gray. Okay? And that's why we come to black, and you don't usually use black to do any form of shading because black is really dark. So like for example, this black, if I wanted to like say this, it was under like maybe a spotlight, you know, like in this case, if it's under a spotlight, this area will be like almost white, okay, and then the bottom part may be slightly darker, so I can use black a little bit to make it darker like that. Alright, and that's what black is for. You don't actually use black to do much shading because this is what happens when you use black for shading. Okay, I'm doing it very lightly because I don't want to destroy the whole thing. Again, light's coming in this way. So I'm being very light-handed with the black, and the results come out to be similar to the blue. So I'm being even more light-handed than the blue in this case. So you get an idea of what shading does. Okay, in color, alright, you can see the difference. If you use different colors, you get different effects on shading, and whichever one is, wait, let me make this a little bit darker. So whichever one you find it most interesting, you use that one because it gives you different effects. Okay, so my best advice I can give you is, if you're ever doing shading, don't ever use black. Use it in like the absolute darkest of situations where you cannot find anything darker, and black is your last resort. Like I said, you know, like if you're doing shading from like the darkest area of a shape, and when you're doing 3D shading, and then this bottom part, maybe you can use a little bit of black to make it look darker. So like this case here, you know, I can do this. That's about it. And then you would have to blend the rest. You know, you have to blend it in. Alright? So now, what if you have abstract drawings like neurographic art? with all the squiggly lines. So let's do a simple one. So I don't want to make it too complicated. I'm going to make 2 because I want to show you different effects. Okay, so I'm going to use red since I have this color out. Maybe red and purple and gray. Alright, so in the case of abstract art, you have no sense of light. You can do light. You can. So example, let's say for this piece, let's go with this piece first. And say, oh no, let's go with this piece. Let's say again, light's coming in this way. And we want, I'll make everything red for now as my first. Well, I can't make everything red, I'm sorry. So let's make layer 1 some red areas. Now you notice that I can't do the 3 shapes must be red thing because I didn't draw enough lines. 3 shapes is probably half, like 80% of the drawing. Then I won't be able to show you anything after that. So very quickly, I'm just gonna do this. Then I'll do purple. As the first layer, you've seen that I'm very sloppy here. Because it's the first layer. Okay, so you see that this coloring is very flat. How a small 3-year-old kid or any young, really young kid will be able to color. Now what if we want to make it like more 3D and we say we want the light coming in this way? So think about areas where it will be lighter and darker. So for example, I would say maybe this area here would be like a 3-dimensional blob. So I want it to be this way. The light coming in, it's a little bit harder. You have to decide, where the light areas and where the dark areas. So let me do this bigger shape here because it's faster. Because I know where the light area is. Again, because this drawing is really small, and intentionally I make it small so that it's easier to make it faster, but because it's small, it's harder to do the shading because it's very fine. But you get an idea. And then I might choose to just make this other area flat. without any 3D, so that you know the other area shows up. Alright, so you get the idea if you want to introduce lighting into your coloring this way. Now, an easier way would be no lighting, absolutely no lighting at all, okay? And all you do is color. Okay, again, layer 1. This is layer 1. And then I'm going to do blue in here. Okay, this blue part is layer 2. But it's kind of layer 1 for the circle. Alright, so next I'm gonna introduce just very simple coloring by just darkening the border and blending them out. Like that. Very simple. This is the method that I've been doing in almost every one of my Neuroart, because I mean almost every one of my neurographic drawing coloring, because it's the easiest to implement. Okay. And it makes your drawing look not so flat and a bit more interesting with all the shading. Alright, so now with the gray part you can leave it flat because you have something to make it, you know, something flat to reflect it, to reflect your other areas of the shading. So with this circle, I'm going over it and then I'm just kind of shading it off too, like that. Okay, it's a circle, but I'm using shading on the circle, and the overlapping creates different colors. So that's why I mean, if you left one area, even if you left this white, this whole thing would stand out still. Alright, so it's pretty hard to see in such a small aspect. So in the video where I'm doing the demonstration, not this video, in another video, my intention is to teach all the basics. This is considered the basic, and then I'm going to show you how you can utilize all the basic into one neurographic drawing or several neurographic drawings, and using all these basics here to do your coloring. Alright? And so with this, I will end the video here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!